On this episode of Star Trek Universe, we are discussing the final episode of Star Trek Discovery, Life Itself, right after these words from our mysterious progenitors.
Welcome to Star Trek Universe, the podcast where you listen on two lifelong friends sit and chat about Star Trek. My name is Matthew Carroll.
I am David C. Roberson.
Well, my friend, we have seen the series finale of Star Trek Discovery.
That's right.
How did it sit with you?
It was a mixed bag for me. I really liked. Okay, so to me there was a clear delineation where it was like, oh, this was going to be the season finale, and then like there was a clear like cut where it was like, and this is what they filmed later. And I really liked what they filmed later.
Yeah, I definitely see that. There's definitely like, I mean, obviously the stuff where she was older and the Zora stuff, was all done later. That's the stuff they added. But I think it's very possible they added in a few like scenes here and there.
I definitely think the Kovich stuff was added in as well.
Yes, which I assume that's maybe what the plan always was, that he was Daniels. I loved that. I thought it was great.
I liked that he had Sisko's ball.
I know. Wasn't that wonderful?
The Chateau Picard.
And the visor. Like, I feel like that's, I don't know. I just love DS9 so much. So them like giving us a call to DS9 made me feel really good. I loved that.
Yeah. So
yes, I think you're right. I think there's a delineation there. I don't know if they added anything else in the first like hour of this episode. I didn't know this was going to be such a long episode. I had no idea. I was like, I'm going to sit down for my breakfast and watch an episode of Star Trek. And then I was like, oh my goodness, I didn't realize that it was going to be this long.
It wouldn't have had to be if we didn't have to see like people like Wish.com inceptioning all over the place with freaking like flamethrowers underneath their feet.
What?
Did you watch the same episode I did?
Are you talking about, I just don't, the phrases you're saying, I don't know what you're saying. Wish.com, Wish.com inceptioning. I see what you're saying.
Yes, where they're like flipping all over the place with anti-gravity, and then like their flamethrowers like shooting really lame looking things of flame. It looks like a Joel Schumacher Batman movie.
Yeah. I agree. Some of that stuff was a little just dumb action. You know what I mean? I know, like some of it was cool. I enjoyed the like changing of gravity and stuff. It's that stuff me and you don't care about that much, but I don't think it was too egregious. I thought for the most part it was fun. I did think that the fact that the worlds they went to were so uninhabitable or whatever was kind of funny. Like, I guess those are worlds that hadn't been terraformed yet. Something like that, but they still had atmospheres. Like, they're still class M planets, or like class something planets that would allow them to breathe and stuff.
Yeah.
It was a little strange.
I may have liked that sequence more if it didn't just start out with like Michael being like, hey, we should work together. And then she's like, well, I might still work with a brain. And Michael's like, let me kick you. And then, like, the whole time they're fighting, like, literally, like, 3 seconds after she kicks her and starts the freaking fight, she's like, we don't have to do this. Then why the fuck did you do it, Michael? Why'd you do it?
Well, she did still have a gun on her. So, like, that was, she did it to disarm her. It was what she did. So, like, she was like, yeah, we're not going to fight. And then Maul's still carrying a big rifle behind her and, like, walking by. She was still the hostage.
And the knife in her boot.
Yeah, like all that stuff. She needed to actually disarm her. I thought that worked. Let me also say, even before it was the last bit, the finale, I thought Sonequa Martin Green like really killed it this episode. Like,
oh yeah,
there's
she did a great job,
great acting. Like even in that scene you're talking about, which you were annoyed by, or whatnot, like. Her delivery to Maul, like her, like just purely from an acting, she was elevating the heck out of that scene.
Yes,
she was killing it, and it made me wonder if, like, because so often she doesn't put that much into some of those moments, I wondered if some of those were reshoots, because it was like they were like, okay, it's the last episode, let's like elevate this scene a little bit, because it was really, really good. It was all her, but so it feels like so often on this show they don't take the time to do that with the acting.
I felt like she was carrying the scene because Maul is terrible. She is so cheesy and over the top.
Maul is pretty like thin of like acting wise.
She's like Manchester Black. Not Manchester Black. What was that character's name? I can't remember the name. Character from The Flash, but it was played by the girl who played Starbuck on Battlestar Galactica. It was she was just really over the top.
And that's the thing, is like I'm forgetting that actress's name, but yeah, the girl who played Starbuck. She's
Katie Sackhoff. Thank you.
Katie Sackhoff's great, but sometimes when you put them in a certain show, like a CW DC show, they think they're on a Joel Schumacher Batman show. it's that old like, let's go over the top. We're in a comic book, you know.
I suspecting that in the case of the CW shows, a lot of times they told them to act a certain way, and I'm like, I don't understand that, because I've seen all of these actors do really good shit.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think that there's some of that happens here. I mean, the actress playing Maul has spent the last like 4 episodes talking to like Power Ranger style villains that are like walking around these visor suits. Like, you know, I can see why she would be like, all right, well, this is this kind of sci-fi. I'm going to be big and bombastic. And I mean, I didn't hate her in this series or anything, but like, she is definitely not working at the level that Sonequa Martin Green is in that scene.
And you know what? For all the stuff with Book being like, oh, she's the last bit of family I have left. Like, he didn't. Did they even have a scene together once she'd been captured? Like,
well, yeah, they did. The one, yeah. He goes to her and tells her like, if you ever need me, I'll be there.
Oh yeah, maybe you won't hate the name.
You won't hate the name. It was a really nice scene, I thought.
Okay, it was so forgettable. I just didn't remember it.
I really felt, as much as they kind of did the thing of restarting Quajon, because they had that planet with like some of the Quajon weren't those Quajon animals?
I think so, but it was like what was it called? It wasn't actually restarting it. It was kind of like they created the world root, or they
planted the world root on a new planet, Sanctuary 4.
Sanctuary.
Yeah, but like, they did that. They did a jump forward and did that. But man, why didn't they do like it? All they needed was like, okay, I don't like let's say they get there and she's like, all right, one person should have all this power. Like, I need to think about this. I'm going to leave and think about this. It's like, well, I will be here when you get back. But let me tell you, there is one world that is ready for terraforming right now. And if it's not done soon, it will, it will be wasted. Is there anything you would like to do with this one world? And she's like, do you have worlds in your database? Can you reform a world you formed before? Or something like that. Like, they could have done it easily, and then the jump forward to 30 years later, and then they're living on New Quajon. Like, I think that would have been better. I know it would have been like a little like Deus Ex Machina or whatever, but we're talking about a machine the God machine. We're literally talking about a God machine. So like, if ever to use a Deus Ex Machina, this is the moment.
Dude, you know what? I was just so thankful they didn't like bring back Locke or bring back Quajon and all of the people there. Like,
oh, I didn't want to bring the people back. I thought she said we can bring back, a genetically identical species, but we can't bring, or even person, but we can't bring back who they are. And I thought it'd be really neat if like, he is landing on a planet that has all the animals. He's like this guy who talks to animals. All of the animal species that were created, not just the Quajon, like humanoids, but like all those animals, their important biodiversity of that planet was all replaced. And he was able to go and be like the father of the new Quajon, like leading them into I think that would have been really, really cool. And then, and they kind of did it with him planting the world root, but I thought like the world root was there. I even thought, I thought this in the middle of the scene, I thought like, what if they need a genetic marker for like for the species, and they had like written this season a little differently, and it turned out that Michael was pregnant, and they were able to pull the genetic marker from her, like from her child. And then they gave her a child at the end, and I was like, that would have all been so good. Anyway, I was sitting there thinking, like, how are they going to do? How can they do the Quajon thing the whole time? And like, all these things would have worked together, but that would have required them to have gotten back together, or at least had sex at some point in this season.
Yeah,
actually, it would have been really funny if she'd gone back and had. Well, nah, maybe that would have been a little dicey. Like she'd gone back and had to like remember that scene where she goes back in time and's hanging out with the like naked version of him walking around the apartment. If she had to like to maintain her cover.
Oh God, yeah, man. What'd you think of Michael getting rid of the progenitor tech?
I think it's the right thing for her not to use it on an ongoing basis. Like that's the right thing. Like her, one person having all that power, I agree with her. That's like that's a thing. It's like a standard Star Trek philosophy. But sending it past the black holes, like it's set up between these two black holes because it's powered by the black holes. And like, let's say there is a cataclysm that destroys all of life in the galaxy, and we need another round of progenitors somewhere millions of billions of years from now. What does it mean to send it past the black hole? As far as I understand, when you send something past the horizon of a black hole, it's like spaghettified and destroyed. So like,
yeah.
I didn't like that they seemingly destroyed it. Now, there's an out in that it's not really a corporeal thing. It's like a portal. So maybe they sent it through the black hole and it ended up somewhere. Like maybe one day to be found billions of years from now to restart the process again.
She did say that thing about whoever made it could, if they're still around, could come back and
true, and I
do something. But
yeah, like. What did you think of that? The idea that the progenitors are not like the species that created the technology.
I think I like it, and the reason why, is like the creation of the progenitors in the first place was, I think, probably a mistake, because it creates this idea in the Star Trek universe that we will never get a satisfactory answer to, because. You know, if Star Trek is quote unquote our future, then we're talking about like, oh, the progenitors created us as well. That's at least the conceit that the Star Trek writers love to run with, is like, oh, we've got to update things because it's our future. Whatever. But by making it the progenitors and saying like, here are these people, you take away all the mystery. But by finding the progenitors, and then we're like, yeah, we just found this shit. We don't know who created it.
Like, we created you guys, but we didn't create the technology to create you guys.
Right. So I like that idea that there's still just like this huge mystery. And maybe they didn't intend for it to be this way when they started the season. Maybe they were just like, this is going to be dope. And then they got there and then went, oh, there's not a satisfactory way of doing this. Shit.
Well, here's something that those scenes made me realize was missing from this season, and I may be wrong. You may be able to jog my memory, but the progenitors aren't common knowledge. Like when Kovich gives her the red directive at the beginning of the season, right? He tells her of the existence of the progenitors, right?
Maybe. Probably.
I think that's right.
I don't remember that.
I don't think that all the people that are on this mission knew the progenitors existed before this mission.
Right.
Which, like, there's in the episode we get in Next Generation where they go and find the progenitor tech for the first time or whatever, and find out about the progenitors. It seems to have a real impact on Picard and those other people. Like the episode that's like ends with this, like, oh my gosh, like, we all come from this like race of progenitors. It's a big deal. It's the answer to the God question in many ways, you know? And like, especially the idea that these are men of science, and like, sure, it's a scientific answer that it's progenitors, but it's also kind of saying there was this godlike species that created us. So instead of like just believing in the random chance of evolution and abiogenesis and all the stuff that Star Trek would that Starfleet would normally discuss, like they're believing in a race of people that would rock their entire existence. And I just realized as I was watching this episode, like, I don't think we ever got that from anybody. Like, having to deal with it was just like this race for the progenitors' technology and how important that was and how it could be used as a weapon instead of like questioning what it means to exist. You know what I mean? Like, that seems like it would have rocked a lot of their, like, faith in who they are and what life is and all this stuff. And that's what it seemed to do in Next Generation. But when I don't know, I just realized watching those scenes that like there's a lack of that this season that I think would have been weighty and would have had a lot of these characters getting a chance to really like dig into themselves a little bit, you know?
I think that's all they've done this season is digging into themselves. And I think that they've done it more than they did on Next Generation. Like on Next Generation, it was a single episode where they were all just very like, we must figure out the puzzle before the other people do it. It's, you know, a lot of what they were doing this season.
Right, but they didn't know what they were leading to when they got to the thing. And when they got to the thing, it was like, it was shocking. You know, it was shocking to all of them. It made them all stand down. It made them stop fighting. It changed them a little bit. And I don't know how much they spread that information around the Federation. Like, I don't know how many people knew about the progenitors before the season. I would assume
it's classified.
Yeah, I would assume too. It's a red directive. I would assume it's very classified. So, yeah, I don't know.
But all season here, they've been going, like, talking about their feelings and what it means and what this means, and Culber's trusting his bullshit.
Exactly. Like, they've done all that stuff, but they had a really, you know, we often talk about like Smallville and like the kryptonite and how it's like a source for info. I think this season, all of those like navel gazy things would have worked better I'm getting deep in the analogy there. For people who don't know Smallville, the kryptonite landed in Smallville and it created all of his villains for all the seasons. Like, we're just it was a source. It was a generative source for villains in Smallville. And so, like, you could, instead of having them all just have crises all season of their personalities and trying to figure themselves out, which they've always done a little bit, I think it would work better if they're dealing with the idea that, like, science versus faith versus like their world's being rocked by this idea of the progenitors, and then they all have to reassess themselves, you know? Anyway, that's a nitpick, but like, I don't know if it's a nitpick. I just like didn't even hit me until this episode that I was like, yeah, nobody seems to have a problem with this. Nobody seems to be questioning the idea that like a race created them all. All of the races were created by another humanoid race.
Yeah, but it is Star Trek, and, you know, at this point, they're just like, yeah, we've seen a lot of crazy shit.
Yeah.
Why not?
But, well, there's a difference between crazy shit and, like, the crazy shit that created all the crazy shit, you know?
Yeah. I don't know. I listened to enough weird-ass supernatural podcasts and stuff that if someone said, hey, here's the definitive proof, I'd be like, all right.
Yeah.
You want mac and cheese, or you want to go get pizza? What do you want to do? I'm a little jaded.
Yeah.
I feel like they would be more jaded.
I mean, maybe. But that's their whole thing, is they're supposed to, like, be excited to explore and learn, you know?
Yeah. And not destroy the technology.
Yeah. Which, obviously, Stamets had a problem with.
Yeah?
I liked that at the very end, that they all had a problem. They didn't just follow her blindly on that, like, decision. I mean, they did, like, I guess they had to or whatever, but, like, I really liked that moment of, like, consternation where they were all yelling that what they thought should happen.
Yeah. Was it like Raynor who, like, turned on Stamets? It was like, this is bigger than your legacy, Stamets. I'm like, Jesus Christ. It's like, I don't think you've said 3 words to this guy the entire season. Now you're just coming at him like that?
Yeah. All right. So the hurricane jump was stupid. I fully acknowledge. The anti-gravity fight I thought was less stupid, but still, like, it's dumb action, but it all made sense. I thought the hurricane jump, it was nice because it's her solving a puzzle that the Breen didn't solve, like we all need to get up there, and they've been there longer than her and couldn't get out, and then she's like,
all these windows, and why did they all fall into the same one?
There were only like 4 of them, and like two of the 4 people that went there ended up in that same window. I mean, I guess it was one of the first windows you encounter, but there were like ones on every surface. It strains incredulity.
Did you have trouble, like, when she was like, Discovery, I cannot tell you what I am seeing, and then like it shows it like dun dun, and I was like, what is she saying?
I had no idea what she was saying.
Like, and then like it wasn't until she mentioned that like there were windows to other worlds, and I was like, oh, is that what that was?
Yeah, no, I couldn't see when she first sat there. I couldn't see the windows to the other worlds. Then when she opened the door by reaching into the shadows, into the 4th dimensional things she could not see or whatever, higher dimensional.
I couldn't tell what it was.
I couldn't tell what it was either, because it didn't look like a control room, and they didn't intend it to. It looked like a weird pink poppy field, but like, yeah, I thought that was really poorly told visually, and they left it up to like instead of I can't tell you what I'm seeing, it should have been something like, yeah, there's a bunch of windows to worlds, which they did say eventually. And then like there should have been like, oh look, I found the technology. Like it just didn't. They did not do a good job visually telling me what was going on. And then when she opened that door, her and Maul seemed to know exactly what it was, and I was like, how? How do you know what that is? Yeah.
Yeah. So the windows to other worlds reminded me of the Atavachron from the original series, when they all are yesterdays. When they go to this planet that's about to be destroyed by its sun, and there are all these windows to like past places in the world. Everyone on the planet basically escaped into their own past and always has. Like once their world is about to be destroyed, they escape into their own past and relive everything again. Which, of course, that's one of those Star Trek things. They introduce a super interesting concept that I really want to explore, and then, well, they got trapped in separate time frames and they had to find their way back. I'm like, so we're not going to go into the thing that I actually cared about.
Yeah, the actual interesting, like, science fiction concept, which, I mean, is one of the strengths of the show, because it introduces ideas and then lets you explore them with your mind, And that's why, this is the show that launches 1,000, like, other writers and stuff, because so many science fiction writers, that this is the show that they like grew up on, because there's tons of concepts introduced, and you're like, your brain starts cooking on what would this mean? What could you do with this? And like, yeah, it's fun stuff, man.
But yeah, that's what I was thinking initially. I was like, ooh, are they gonna do something with that? And then they didn't, but it's okay.
After a season where we complained constantly about them wasting time in the middle of this race, to get the Progenitor's tech, like, I really liked Tilly saying, I got a crazy idea, and Raynor saying, no need to qualify it, spit it out.
Yes. Yep.
I felt like that was us talking.
Yep.
I don't know why. When did I start identifying most with Raynor? Like, as a human watching this show, like, somehow I'm more Raynor than anything else.
Yeah.
It's no good, man. We're old.
I'm okay with it. I think this is the same thing young Dave would have said about this show.
I really liked the moment when Raynor had the chance to do whatever he wanted to the Breen. Just do whatever he wanted. He could have sent them into a sun or whatever. And he scrunches his face for a second because he knows he has that power, and then he goes, "Galactic barrier. It'll take them decades to get back, but they'll live more than they gave my family."
Yeah,
it's really good.
I would have put him into a sun.
Well, see, and that is kind of a gambit, though. Like, if
let's come back stronger.
Well, if they hadn't decided to send the tech away, like the whole thing was they didn't want the reason they needed the Breen to go further away is because like they didn't want the Breen telling the other Breen about the technology. So, yeah. I thought it was really cool that they used the spore drive that way. It was a great last episode, and it was Raynor thinking. It was perfect. I loved it so much. Raynor as like a commanding officer who thinks outside the box, thinking of something with no idea if the engineering is possible, and then they all go, "No, not possible." Unless, because that's the way Star Trek is so often. Like you got a commander who has an idea, and then you've got a crew that's like, "Whew, that's a bold idea, sir." But you know what? We could do this and this and this. Like then they start unraveling the puzzle that the commander created for them. I loved it so much. It reminded me of the best of Star Trek. All my favorite stuff. I loved it.
Yeah, I dug that. And the visual of it was really cool. I liked that. Saucer section separation,
which I know it can separate because now the Discovery can separate everything from everything. But like I don't think we've seen it do that, have we?
I don't think so, no.
It was cool, man. First episode of TNG, they separate, right? And they only separate a couple of times throughout the series. And it was just nice to see, like, a saucer separation in the last episode of Discovery. It was like a nice bookend somehow.
Yeah. Yep, I dug that.
Yeah, me too.
So we didn't get, like, a ton on what happened to everybody. Which, makes sense because it's Discovery and we don't know most of these people. Why would we get endings for them?
Well, one of the stupidest things I thought in those like final endings was the idea that Tilly is the longest serving person at the Academy.
Yeah, and to that I went, Jesus Christ. Because I know we get this spinoff.
Well, we know we get the spinoff, but also like one of the biggest problems of this show is that it has been setting benchmarks that now we know where characters end up. Like, we can't have mystery about Tilly now. Like, she is about to be on a spinoff where apparently she stays the entire time because we know she's been there the longest. And, like, what the hell? What the hell? Why did you... Like... The fact that you had to take a minute away from this episode, I liked it. You did it well. I'm not complaining about how you did it. But the fact that you had to take a minute away from this episode to set up the craft thing in a weird way where they like, okay, I take it back. I don't like how they did it. I take it all back. Like the scene was nice, but like the fact that the whole craft thing was like a weird plan from Kovich is weird.
I don't know that it was a weird plan from Kovich.
It's absolutely a weird plan from Kovich. I'm not saying that like it's some sort of fixed point that Kovich is protecting. Yeah. Like but that the fact that I guess it's fine. It's just it just annoys me. I don't like it. I don't like the idea that Kovich, this entire show, we know he's somehow out of time. We know he knows the past. We did not know that he knew distant future shit. And that, like, everything he's been having them do has been a part of, like, stuff he already knew how it should play out. And it kind of removes all the stakes from everything if he knows exactly what he's putting into place.
Well, we don't know what the fixed points are. We don't know what has to remain.
Sure.
Calypso came out between seasons 1 and 2.
Yeah.
So they didn't have a plan as to what they were going to do yet. So that was a fixed point. There's some reason before Discovery ever went to the future. Maybe they weren't even supposed to go to the future. Who knows? We don't know yet. But time was changed enough that they had to go to the future for whatever reason. Once there, they get into Starfleet. Their ship has changed. Meanwhile, Kovich is sitting there going, well, that can't be what happens. Okay, we're going to have to change that somewhere along the line. Like, I like the idea that Kovich, there are, like, big fixed points that have to happen, and Kovich is, like, the Star Trek nerd who's sitting there going, we're going to have to retcon that.
Yeah, I don't like it at all. I mean, like, it's fine. It like, works. But, like, I
understand what you're saying, because, like, I had the same emotional reaction yesterday.
It's what we've been talking about all along. This idea that, like, and I think all stories work best when you have an event horizon that is like where the story is right now, where we have a current timeline. And like, it's fine. This show is all about jumping around in time and doing interesting things with the timeline. That's fine. But as like this last thing to be like, the craft thing to me in this episode felt super contrived. It felt like we know we have that endpoint, so we have to set it up. We just have to do something. And I'm sure they had some plan to do something bigger later, and then when it got canceled, they had to like fix it. So they did what they could. But that's the problem with setting those points. And so now we have Tilly, for no reason in this episode, they had to mention that she's the longest serving Academy person, just so we remove all like danger from Tilly for that entire series. Every time she's on a ship that's going to crash, we know she'll be fine. Like, no matter what, she's fine. And so like, and maybe she won't even be in that much danger. She's like a teacher and the show will be about her students. Cool. But yeah, it just frustrated me. I don't know.
Yeah, I choose to not be frustrated by that because I don't know, one, if she's even going to be on the show because they haven't officially announced it yet. Two, I don't know what capacity should be on the show. I don't know what kind of show it's going to be. And, you know, also, like, you know, one of my favorite books is Galapagos by Kurt Vonnegut, where he literally has asterisks by the names of the people who are going to die.
Right.
Like,
that's fine. There's nothing wrong with having a story like that, but like when Vonnegut wrote that, he did it because it's novel, because it's interesting,
right? And
he's doing it for a certain effect. And I feel like here they're not doing it for a certain effect; they're doing it for like, oh, this is a neat idea. Let's do this. Listen, we just want to have Tilly have a nice ending on Discovery, so we're gonna get her mentioned in the finale as what she having this happy life afterwards. And it's like, yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe this Academy show won't have her in it at all. Maybe it's set somewhere after or before. But like, yeah, I don't know. It just annoys me that they keep putting these like solid things in place that may remove stakes from other shows.
Well, they said it'll be the 32nd century,
which is where they are now, right?
By the end of Discovery, you're in the 33rd century. But
what?
Yeah, but
the show's gonna be in the 32nd century.
Starfleet Academy will be in this 32nd century. But by the end of the flash forward in Discovery's finale, you're in the early 33rd century.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're talking about the flash forward. Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah. So not okay, gotcha. Well, that's what I mean. Like, that's exactly what the problem that I'm discussing. Yeah. I thought you were saying for a second that like they were talking about setting this show before the end of Discovery, not the flash forward, but like the end of Discovery. I was like, wait a second, how does that make sense? They didn't even they talked about how they didn't have a Starfleet Academy prior to like Tilly going to start it or whatever.
But she's starting this mentorship program, and that sounds like it is like a big setup for the spinoff. So
yeah, for sure.
And I'm fine with it. You know what else felt like, what I'm more excited about that felt like a spinoff idea was
Maul
and Kovich.
Yeah, for sure.
That felt like something was a setup.
Oh yeah. I mean, he sees her value, and he probably knows that she's in the timeline. She's not going to have that much more effect after now, so he can like take her and use her as one of his time agents.
And I love that kind of shit.
Me
like
too.
that very premise was why I was excited about Legends of Tomorrow. It was just a bunch of people who didn't have any. They're like, oh yeah, you're going to be Legends. Let's take you away. Oh yeah, it actually just took you away because you don't have any bearing on the timeline whatsoever.
Yeah, really great. That's a really great opening to that show.
And that was actually a really like one of those things that that show did really well at the beginning, which was have them come to the realization that we're here because we don't make a difference.
Yeah.
And having to grapple with that, like being heroes and trying to figure out what does that mean for me. So I really want something like that. Something like Exiles or from the Marvel comics, or just something. God, I just really want a temporal war show or like a temporal agent show or something. Well,
they have the setup for it now. I don't know that they'll use it, but they have the setup for it. And I love the idea that Daniels, I know he mentioned the relics around his office, but I want to hear I want to see those stories and like see either the the actor playing Kovich or the actor who played Daniels back in the day, like have them like jumping through the timeline. And do you know, what if this old, you know, version of Kovich still has what if he's his own superior officer? You know what I mean? Like he's like, have a show where he is his own red directive. The only reason he has a different name is because he has to talk to himself in the past and give himself missions and stuff. And he's like directing his own past. Like it would be so cool and interesting and weird. That sounds like a lot of fun. Yeah. And I do think Maul would be a lot of fun in that show. Even though we just talked about how I don't think that she like elevated this show with her acting, I think that she has a potential to be a really good, like, you know, she is this sort of wild character, has to be sort of tamed and like brought into this sort of like brought into an organization like the Starfleet or Temporal Fleet even. Yeah.
And I want to know how all that like fits in with like the supervisors and the travelers and Wesley and all that stuff. And I've been saying this forever. Like I would like, because if you look at like Prodigy and you look at Lower Decks, they really reference the original series era as how it was presented in the original series, as opposed to how Discovery and Strange New Worlds presents it. But they've, you know, obviously Lower Decks has crossed over with Strange New Worlds, and we know from Strange New Worlds that the reason they're different is because of temporal war shit. Like, I want to see like temporal agents, someone like Kovich, possibly, who might be the Coulson of that universe, the MCU's Coulson, who's just a big fan. He's just a big Trekkie, and he's got like display cases showcasing all the alternate universe realities with like little stasis cubes or something.
It would, you know, we've talked over and over. Oh my gosh, I'm just realizing that it's Quantum Leap, but in Star Trek.
Yes.
And it's like
what you're talking about?
Yeah. Well, you're talking about the idea of having like those. We've talked a lot about how Lower Decks is like a big like reference generating machine because they can do anything and go anywhere. It doesn't have an impact on the other shows really. Like it can, but they're just doing their thing. And a show like that could be a serious version of that. And then I realized like it's basically a quantum leap. Like he's like jumping around the timeline to any of these points. We've talked about wanting an anthology series where we get to see these different points in history, you know, of Star Trek. Like how cool would it be if we're doing that? But it also has the element of a temporal agent being involved in each of those cases. Or you could even have like telling the story, but you don't know who the temporal agent is. And they've introduced that on Strange New Worlds too, with the temporal agents. So like, there's definitely some temporal agent stuff brewing that they could absolutely like. I don't know. It's kind of like you talked about with the progenitors. I don't know if it's one of those concepts that's so complicated it would be really, really hard to write well. And like, so maybe it's just better at the fringes and like keeping it a mystery. But it's something that I would definitely watch.
Oh yeah. I feel like it wouldn't be hard. Just hire Stephen Moffat, for Christ's sake.
No, I'm sorry. No. Don't Doctor Who my Star Trek. I'm sorry. I love Doctor Who. I love it for what it is. But, like, I care about the canon of Star Trek too much. And I know it has its timey-wiminess. I get it. But, like, Doctor Who is so, like, it works, right? Don't worry. I have a
Star Trek has been.
Yeah, well, no, it has not. It has.
Yes, it has.
It has not. I disagree. It has not been that way, especially in single episodes. There. When you look at the history of the 60 years of Star Trek, there are things that you have to kind of like, you know, I guess it works, but like individual episodes don't like just have these. I mean, I'm not saying they don't never, but like for the most part, the time travel is kept a lot tighter within the individual episodes and movies.
Okay, if that's what you want to believe.
What are you talking about? Tell me when you don't think that.
Well, overarching anyway, like
that's what I'm saying. Overarching, there are problems because it's been 60 years and different writers. It's like the Bible. There's no one keeping control over that canon.
If your problem is that you don't want Doctor Who to wind up screwing up your canon with crazy time travel antics and going, it works. That's what the Star Trek writers have been doing piecemeal all these years. Like, you can't just like put a stupid qualifier on it, like within a singular episode. No, it's the whole tapestry of Star Trek, and the whole thing is silly as shit.
That is exactly what I'm doing, and I think that like there is a line between like, okay, we introduced an idea 20 years ago. We need to move it around a little bit, and that's why we have the temporal war. We can kind of like change things slightly without changing the overall thrust of what happened. Okay, that's cool. But Doctor Who does stuff that's just like so stupid logically, where it's like, don't worry, I carried this stick with me, so now the timeline still exists. You know, it's just like, no, like, don't give me that. I don't want anyone Doctor Who-ish. Like, it's fine. They can write it differently. Like, I like the writing on Doctor Who, but I don't like it for Star Trek.
I would take Stephen Moffat over any of these people that they keep hiring who have no freaking imagination.
Sure.
Like, we've been sitting here complaining about all these different Star Trek shows. Like, why wouldn't they do this? This would be so much more interesting. Why wouldn't they do that? That would be so much more interesting. This is the most boring version of what they decided to do. I never felt that way with Doctor Who. I was always going, what? That's exciting and weird. Yeah. I mean, let's embrace it.
I mean, it could be fun, but I think it eats itself.
Yeah,
like
everything does though.
Yeah, sure, but it's the same thing we always. I mean, it's every like having a contiguous universe in any realm requires some amount of holding the reins back, not letting the creativity flow fully, and it sucks, but that's true. And I do think that has its own aspect of eating itself. So you have to have a balance, because if you there's just certain like concepts that you watch them and they're like, that movie was so good and it has nowhere to go from here. You know what I mean? Like, and that's beautiful. And some great movies are that way. I watch Everything Everywhere at Once is my favorite movie. I don't think that has anywhere to go after that movie. Like, I like the concepts, but I feel like they explored them well. And like any sort, like it's singular, you know? I don't know. There's all kinds of Memento. You know, that movie eats itself, but it eats itself with creativity. It does all these interesting time jumping back and forth, and then it ends at the center and it's done. You know what I mean? The story is over. It's not a contiguous story that you can move forward with, I feel like. I mean, you could, sure, but it doesn't need it. It doesn't like demand it. And a story like Star Trek, where you have like, or the Marvel Cinematic Universe, or the DC Universe, or all of these stories, I feel like you have to maintain a line between like going all out and doing something that will disrupt everything, you know, and then sometimes they fail at that, and sometimes they do movies that like break universes like Star Wars did or whatever, you know?
Yeah. I kind of feel like what you're suggesting is, don't do this because I'm afraid it might break my idea of the universe.
Yeah.
But they could always do that.
Sure.
And I feel like Discovery has come closer to that than we've ever seen before.
Yeah, you may be right.
But with bad writing.
Sure. Sure. And like, that's in many ways, I think this show, a lot of the sins of this show are Moffat-esque writing. Like,
oh yeah, no, I don't agree with that.
The Red Angel stuff, the like all this stuff where it's like, hey, don't worry, this is gonna loop back on itself. Like, all that stuff is like very Doctor Who-ish. And honestly, I gotta admit, I like Stephen Moffat, I like Doctor Who, but I don't know as much of like who wrote exactly what and which seasons and stuff on Doctor Who. You'd have to remind me.
Yeah.
But I just think that overall, Doctor Who is a vibe. I love Doctor Who, but it's not the vibe I want for Star Trek. It's very similar,
yeah,
but it's not the vibe I want.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what kind of vibe I want. I think I'd want a different vibes for different shows. But specifically for a temporal agent show, I would probably want Moffat involved.
Mm-hmm.
Unless he just said, like, unless you just talked to him and he was just like, I have no interest in Star Trek, I hate Star Trek, and you're like, oh, Jesus Christ, no. I don't want that shit going on.
What'd you think of did you solve the puzzle? The one between many puzzle?
The
triangle
8th
puzzle,
grade IQ test puzzle, yeah,
it was like so simple. It was so simple, and it took them so long to work it out that I thought it was going to be something different.
Mm-hmm.
When I saw 9 triangles, and Maul said that the thing about putting them all as one triangle, I was like, no, that's not one between many. That's just one. Like, that's not one made of many. Like, no, like it's going to be it's 9 triangles. That's 3, 3, 3. That creates a triangle.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, this is so simple. And I started overcomplicating it. I was like, oh, maybe there's more to it than that, because like clearly these guys would figure it out by now. These guys are like, Burnham is a genius, supposedly, like with all this logic and like, yeah, I don't know. That really bothered me because it was so simple. I liked it on one level. I liked it was figure outable. Like, I love a puzzle. I loved one of the things I loved about like Batman the Animated Series was the Riddler. Like, you could solve them. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And a lot of the clues you could solve. And I liked that about this whole season. I also liked the fact they brought up the primordial. A few episodes ago, they brought up that these were primordial black holes, like since the beginning of time or whatever. As early as we could go back, or older than anything in the universe, they talk about. And then this thing is sitting between them, and apparently it's powered by them. So like, and then when this episode, when you find out it's been a thing that's been happening forever, it's like, oh, that is cool. That is why it's between 2 primordial black holes. Those were probably either created by or just utilized by whoever invented this technology to power that technology. And I think that was just cool. I dug that a lot.
Yeah.
So I like that things were figure outable. I don't like when they're so simple and our main character doesn't see it. Like on animated series, Batman the Animated Series, I would always have to like kind of like figure it out quick before Batman. And this, I was like, oh, I know the answer immediately. And then I stared at her for like another 20 minutes while she thought about it and while she like fought Maul and stuff. And yeah.
Yep. That was weird and lame.
Culber. Let's talk about Culber. What'd you think of his, like, I loved his arc this episode, but like, it frustrates me because it felt like it was introducing a new idea for his character that they'll never get to explore, likely.
Yeah, whatever. It gave him an end to his arc, and if they ever wanted to bring him back, whether in a Starfleet Academy or what have you, they can do that, and he can be like, I have all these different memories now from Janal.
Right.
But,
yeah.
I mean, he didn't know he had it until he had this sense that he knew he was going to be needed. Like, he's clearly got some kind of, like, lingering Janal floating around in his head that's telling him things.
Exactly.
And I'm down with that. If we never see it again, I'm also down with that.
Yeah.
I like that actor, and I like the character, but I don't have an overwhelming attachment. Like, it would be nice to see some of these people again, because I didn't feel like Stamets, for instance, got a good send-off here in this episode.
I thought it was interesting to have his adoptive child teach him something. Like, that's a thing that, like, I think people that are really intelligent and, like, have a lot going for them scientifically or whatever, and then having someone that is your progeny, and then like having them be able to turn around and tell you something that you wouldn't figure out yourself, like, and it kind of like is this emotional intelligence that they have in this moment, and not necessarily emotional intelligence in general, but emotional intelligence about like the way that Stamets works, the way that like his adoptive child sees him, and like sees the things he needs to let go to be happy. I thought that was a nice, like, his family is there to take care of him, both Culber and Adira.
Yeah. The whole, like, existing is the reason enough, like, that's the point and all that shit. In a lot of ways it felt like the Discovery writers trying to justify their own show. We're all flawed, but this is part of the journey. This is, our existence is the reason for existing.
Well, the actual line is he wants more. He wants more. He wants this technology. And Adira says, you went through a great thing, and you learned some things, and isn't that enough? And like, I think less than, if that line is them saying anything, I think it could be a line about the show we wanted more. We had more story to tell, but like, let's be happy with this, the moment in time we had. I think that's kind of beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not hating it. Like, as far as like, feeling like the writers are trying to give us like a statement about the show in general. Like I do feel bad about shitting on Discovery as much as I do, but you know, it is a bit of show that is rife with trouble behind the scenes from day one.
Sure.
Like, Brian Fuller was going to make it, and it was not going to be at all what it was going to be.
I know.
And he got fired, and then the people who came in basically stole it from a video game. So then there's like lawsuits and shit. Like, and then like the showrunners after them were abusive to people and had to be fired. It has been just fucked from day one.
I do think for a show that has had that much going on behind the scenes, I think it has some really cool, bold stuff for Star Trek. Like, it's added a lot to the canon. I don't think it has. I've been thinking about this concept for a while. I want to make a YouTube video about it, but like, all canons are basically like a take a penny, leave a penny jar. And if you just keep taking pennies, the penny jar feels empty, and that's why when you keep using the Borg over and over and never making them more interesting, the Borg stop being interesting. So you gotta leave pennies in the Borg. You gotta, and they did that in Picard. They didn't do that, I feel like, in Voyager. You know what I mean? Like, and there's just sort of like, you deplete the thing. If you just keep using it, you deplete it. But if you take a penny and then in that same series you leave more pennies behind, that there's something to that. There's something like it can continue. It can continue to be interesting and have content to pull from. And I think this show did that job. And I think in some cases did it really well. I'm fascinated by how much, like, we talk about wanting a temporal war show and wanting like, with Kovich being the driving force behind the last 2 seasons, we kind of got a temporal war show. Like, we didn't know it, but he is existing. We've talked about how he seems like he's existing outside the timeline. Well, apparently he is.
Definitely, yeah.
And apparently all these missions that he's been sending them on have been temporal fleet missions in a way. I think that's really fun and cool and exciting. Like, so we got a lot of little things added to the canon. We got the mystery of the progenitors solved and recreated, you know? Like, we found out who the progenitors were, like how they got their technology, and then we found out there's someone else behind that. You know, like, it's just, that's cool, man. That's exactly what I'm talking about when I'm talking about, like, using the canon, like, use it up, but then, like, put something back for us to use later.
And the person who created that technology, Kovich. He drew the plans on a legal pad.
Yep. One of those little windows just shows a little baseball.
I
don't know. Like, talking about this season finale and talking about the series overall, obviously we've had our issues, and there's been tons of things I wish they'd done differently. But I like this show. I like these characters. I find myself getting emotional talking about some of these moments. And so, I don't know. I guess I don't know if I can expect too much more than that. Like, I'm pretty happy with it.
When they sent when she flew the Discovery out at the end and everyone was like lined up like an honor guard to watch her disappear, I shed a tear.
That's great. I love that. I love that you didn't have the same thing distract you that I had.
What exactly was the thing that distracted you? Because I assure you that I was distracted by several things and annoyed by everything, but also trying to allow myself to feel the things.
I didn't get there on that scene because do you remember what we talked about on Picard? How they had like one ship model, so they flew in like 1,000 of the exact same class of ship.
Yeah.
And that was really annoying because it's like the fleet of Star Trek is so big and varied, and like because I'm assuming it's a CGI issue, like they only had time or ability to use that one model, and they brought in like 50 of the same ship for when Riker came in. That annoyed me here because like as she's getting that processional, I think it was shuttles, but they just decided to include like every shuttle, which. I don't know. I guess I wanted a big varied fleet, which
we got that in the background. All those ships were there. they were all like lined up around, and then like the shuttles were like the little like maintenance shuttles and stuff that you always see at the shipyards. And the point was they were no longer doing their job. They were like lined up as an honor guard to see Discovery off.
Oh, I get it. I get the point. I was distracted by, and maybe like I was gonna say, maybe there's more in the background than I saw on my first watch. But it seemed like, and maybe there's a lot back there that they didn't want to show it up too close, because again, it would like reveal too much about the ships back there. They didn't want to like write a bunch of canon about the ships back there, but like it felt to me like they were using a lot of the same model again, and it made Starfleet feel too homogenous to me. But you know, I could be wrong. I definitely would like to see that scene again and see what else is out there.
I mean, you know, I doubt that every Starfleet ship was, there.
Yeah, I'm looking at it again. There's a sea of that same like little shuttle, and then up top there's maybe 15 ships, and a couple of them are the same ship, or the same model. There's like maybe a total of 10 different models in that scene, which is better than Picard did. So I can't blame it for being like Picard, but like. I guess that just bothered me enough. There's like 5 or 6 of the exact same ship, or the exact same model, and then, but you know, whatever. It's not like it's a flaw. It's fine, but it just bothered me a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't sit there and like count. I was just, you know.
Yeah, and yeah, as it turns, there's
trying to enjoy it.
I know, and I'm trying to enjoy it too, but certain things bother me. It's a beautiful scene. It's really pretty. And,
you know, that gives me hope that they're willing to, like, bend their story a little bit to Calypso. It gives me hope that Michael Chabon might come back and do his story, his craft story. Because he says that he wants to do the Odyssey in the Star Trek universe.
Right, yeah.
So Craft's story isn't done, clearly.
Yeah. I mean, I hope you're right. I hope that they get to do that. I liked that Culber got to say I'm a doctor, not a physicist. Yeah. It was small but fun. It felt like the kind of thing you save for a series finale, but I didn't think it was. I think it was probably part of the stuff they filmed first, you know?
Maybe.
I've been wondering all season if, because the Saru story seems so disconnected, I've been wondering if they added some of that in that finale, you know? We even talked about the possibility that he might have died earlier in the season in the original draft or something. We had talked about it here. But I think now I'm realizing that maybe those Saru scenes were just batch. Like maybe, you know, we've talked a lot about this show about how like they've saved makeup costs by like getting rid of characters in makeup. I wondered if, so like almost every one of his scenes is not like around the crew. So he's not on the ship, obviously. But like, I wondered if maybe they batch filmed all his scenes. Like, I can see it. Yeah. Like they just had him with Tarina, and it's just like, let's shoot it all on Starfleet Command, and just shoot it all here, and it'll take like 3 weeks or whatever, and then you're done with the season, you know? Then he came back for that ending stuff.
Yeah, which we knew that he was doing promotional material or promotion touring and shit for Hocus Pocus and a couple other things, I think, but and he just couldn't be a part of the season, but we do know he came back and shot stuff. He said that he came back and shot stuff.
Well, that final scene where she's old and stands up and gets that moment with all the crew being young, that's the scene that got me emotional.
Really?
Yeah, when she reaches out and grabs his hand and stands up, and she's the younger version of herself. Yeah, that got me.
Yeah, that got me for just a second, and then like it went on too long, and I was annoyed by it.
Sure, that scene was very like. Look, it was very like they're all in heaven or something. A little too saccharine, but like just the moment of her standing, like taking Saru's hand was powerful, and then standing and being in his arms and looking like the young version of her. Yeah, I'm getting verklempt now talking about it. That was really good.
Yeah, I just felt like that scene was like, we really need to have Owo and Detmer back for the last episode.
Yeah. Yeah. What did you think about Action Saru, this episode?
Oh, he was fun. I liked his. I liked that he was, as they say, standing on business. And
standing on business.
Yeah,
I don't know. I've never heard that phrase.
Really?
Yeah. What does it mean?
Look it up. Look it up.
You could just tell me.
Nah. No.
Making me use Google.
I'm not going to say it because I know what it means, but no matter what I say, because there's a few different meanings, and whatever I say, someone's going to say I got it wrong.
To take care of your responsibilities or put your money where your mouth is. And there's a picture of Drake for some reason.
That is a heavily disputed portion, the Drake thing, because a lot of people say Drake came up with it, and then other people are like, no, people have been saying that for years. And
yeah, I don't know. I mean, like,
it's heavily disputed.
I understood from context what you meant, but the way you said it made it sound like it was a thing, and I'm not aware of that vernacular there.
No, it's one of those things that, has now escaped the predominantly African-American vernacular, and now everyone says it online, and it's really annoying.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you're perpetuating that.
Saru standing on business, he said it with his whole chest.
Oh, I see.
Jesus Christ.
Well, I gotcha. So... yeah, I like the action Saru stuff. I liked the him bluffing, look into my eyes, tell me if you see even a glimmer of doubt. It is very, like, we've talked about it, but like the Kirk, just complete bluffs. I love them.
Mm-hmm.
Are you insane? Not to my knowledge. Good stuff.
I enjoyed it. I liked Saru's little bit in there.
Yeah,
sure.
It was good. All right. Well, you got any other thoughts about this episode?
I don't think I do. We've got some feedback though.
Well, let's get to it.
All right. Well, Tim Castillo. I don't know if this is about this episode specifically. Tim says, just 1/4 light year at a time. Dave, Matt, I was laughing quite a bit during your last episode. I felt all those things, Dave. Here's the thing. I've realized what this series is, but I've realized it too late while watching the rest of the penultimate episode of the series. This is the Fast and the Furious of Star Trek. It doesn't make sense. It's all about family, and every instance of it ratchets up the stakes exponentially. I barely made it out of the first Fast when I can't remember, 12 or 13, I guess. I haven't seen the rest of them because they're the dumbest, schlockiest garbage pails of action movies I can think of. Baldwin Groot just needs a vehicle and he can do anything. And in Disco, it seems that if Burnham has a spacesuit of some kind on, she also has superhuman capabilities. Having now realized this, I actually think I can enjoy this series considerably more because the suspension of disbelief is almost completely unnecessary. It's not intended for that because it doesn't seem the writers considered it when breaking the episodes. Just things happen, not because it makes sense, but because our characters are the heroes. What's incredible about this is that The Rock wasn't in this one, and I hope to the heavens he's not in any Trek, DC, or Marvel thing in the foreseeable future as well. I kind of feel like he is the harbinger of death for an IP.
Well,
yeah. They only let him in when everyone else has given up hope for the property.
Well, he was in Voyager, though. He was in Voyager.
He was in Voyager, yeah. He fought Seven.
He fought 7 and 9 in some sort of gladiatory combat.
Yeah, that's right. One of the worst episodes and one of the worst seasons. I digress. Here's hoping for a spectacular finale episode of Discovery, and as Commander Captain is learning on Disco, we're not crewmates, we're family. P.S. I know this isn't the only series where the crew becomes a family, but I'm just going for something here without really giving it a good think. It's what the Disco writers would have wanted.
Oh, man. That was scathing while being amicable. Thanks, Tim.
Yeah. That was enjoyable. We got one from Aaron Deming with a title Startig Notaro as the subject. Hey, Matt and Dave, I think this is my first time writing into the Star Trek Universe podcast, but I have written into other Stranded Panda shows.
Yeah.
This podcast is actually what got me into Star Trek. That's neat.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. Thanks for that's so cool, Aaron. I'd love to hear more about that. That's awesome.
That is cool. I didn't think that we were going to do that. Sure, I've seen a few episodes of TNG when I was a kid, and my dad would channel surf between commercials, or caught bits of the movies here and there. I definitely remember seeing Kirk and Spock on a bus in the 80s talking about whales and thought to myself, Star Trek fans must have been pissed when this was the setting instead of space. Nah, man, it's one of the best ones.
Yeah, it's one of our favorites.
Thanks to your thoughtful discussions, I have been completely caught up on all the Treks since Discovery before Strange New World started.
Wow.
I also have gone back to old episodes to learn more about the characters and events that have been referenced. This idea came from you, also from back when you were doing the Picard Primer in 2019. I've watched all episodes with the Dominion War, Q, Species 8472, Mirror Universe, etc. The main reason I wanted to write in was because of your discussion about Tig Notaro's recent mission saving distractions. During the episode of the Office Ladies podcast, Test the Store, they discussed Tig's part in that and the pacing. Here's the quote from the transcript. Jenna says, yes, well, Brent Forrester sent in an audio clip about directing Tig in this episode, and it's so great you have to hear it. Brent Forrester says, for the part of the little girl's mom, Mindy always pictured Tig Notaro. We didn't audition anybody, we just offered it to Tig, and she was great, but at the time I was concerned about the pacing of the scene. And after the first take, I walked up to Tig, and I said, hey Tig, I have a thought. And she said, you want me to talk faster? And I said, yeah, how do you know? And she said, every time they put me on camera, they tell me to talk faster. And I said, can you talk faster? And she said, no, I can't. So what do you think? Does this change your perspective of her character knowing it's just so perfectly her?
Oh, that's pretty funny.
Live long and Josper True, Aaron Deming, a.k.a. Sonny Tetris. Yeah, no, it doesn't change my perspective. She just shouldn't have been on the show.
No, I like her on the show a lot, but in those tense moments, she is like a little out of place with the with the way she delivers things slowly. But it's not so much that she talks slowly; it's that they gave her like a bunch of stuff to say that isn't important. That's
the real issue.
Yeah, that's the. I love her as that character. Janet Reno, Janet Reno, as I said last week. But no, I like Tig a lot. And I think she's great on the show. But it's just this season was just so uneven about the like when are they in a hurry?
Yeah,
and that annoyed me because it's like seconds matter now. But in a few seconds, they won't. Like, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. And Tig is like, they're like, we need a solution now. And Tig is like, I remember I used to, back in Shelbyville, I wore an onion on my belt.
Let me spin a yarn for you.
All right, we got another one from Tim Castillo.
Let me stay real quick. So, Aaron, that means the world we got you into Star Trek and that you've gone back and watched so much of it. That is so cool. The Dominion War stuff's some of my favorite. I love that you went back and watched that. I know we've talked about it a lot. That's so cool. And just having I love Star Trek. And yeah, I know I bring it up on other Stranded Panda podcasts all the time. And so it's super cool that you came and checked it out. I hope and it sounds like you're enjoying it at least enough to stick with it this far. So that's awesome. I feel really happy that we could do that. That means a lot to me as a Star Trek podcaster. So thanks, man. Thanks for writing that in.
Absolutely. Tim Castillo writes in, Triangle Woman hates Person Woman. Matt, Dave, this is a big one. Literally. It's quite a bit longer than most of the other episodes. Actually, it's the longest Star Trek episode ever.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So Michael is wearing a Federation away mission spacesuit, not a Breen suit. Curious. Michael hopping and jumping and flying and swooping doesn't need to make sense. Heroes just hero around. Yeah, gravity and stuff. Whatever.
I love Tim's new Fast and the Furious attitude.
Yeah,
it's pretty great. I feel like we need Tim to write us a review of, or just record a review of every episode of Discovery from that perspective.
Yeah. Michael kicks Maul out of the blue and then suggests that Maul stand down. Yep, Michael's the hero. This checks out. Makes sense. Oh, so many flame spurts everywhere. Mm-hmm. So many. everywhere. Jumping the Breen ship was pretty awesome. I mean, it was.
It was.
I liked it quite a bit. The ship felt weighty. Very cool. Definitely impossible, but we can do it, because heroes hero. Heroes hero, maman.
Maman? Oh, from Picard.
And also from like every description of this podcast since Picard
Since
season
Picard?
2.
You've still been doing that? Okay.
Yes.
I love that you have your own like character in the descriptions that I haven't even seen. That's great. I knew about it when you started it. I didn't know you were still doing it.
Oh yeah, no. I haven't let up.
Don't ever let up, Dave. I love it.
I won't. Tim continues, I did wish it meant that Stamets was disappeared into the spore world or something like that. A huge feat deserves a huge cost. Dude, that would have been so cool and sad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
Destroying the portal feels too simple, and it makes this whole season feel way less meaningful or necessary. Thanks for all the fish, I guess. Holy crap, is Kovich Wesley Crusher? Oh, nope, not him. Still a cool reveal, though. I can dig it. It's like the more I'm reading this, the more I'm hearing it in Eeyore voice. I stopped writing and just watched the rest. I liked this episode. For the most part, it felt like a good ending. But some things. Number 1, a triangle puzzle? What are we doing here? A triangle puzzle? That's the big thing? A triangle puzzle. I don't want to harp on it, but really?
I will say, the triangle puzzle would have been harder if they didn't have the clue. Like, and that's the thing. So then that's why, Maul failed it, even with the clue, which drove me nuts. And it just, okay, rethinking about my thoughts about that scene. Burnham takes a while to get to it, but she is like still fighting Maul and stuff, like, and she gets like knocked out by Maul. So maybe she would have been able to figure it out very quickly, but it's just that Maul got the better of her, did it wrong, and that screwed everything up. And then she finally got to do it. It didn't take her that long to figure it out once she like sat down in front of the pieces, but it still seemed like she was still thinking about it. It seems like it would have just been like run over there and just do it instead of looking over there. And she like recites the thing again, like the many between the one, or the one between the many, and yeah.
Plus, that clue also was the gateway into finding the place in the first place, like the space between the lights with the shadow.
That's true. Well, is it though?
Yeah, it was.
Well,
because then she thought about it again and was like, oh, wait, just like the shadow from the lights.
Well, no, that was saying, what she was saying, that wasn't the clue. She was saying that was the clue for the original team to figure out the triangle puzzle, which is a harder puzzle if you have to think about the entire building and think about the fact that it's the negative space. Mm-hmm. But with the clue, it's just way too easy.
Tim says, I'm glad they brought back something that had been destroyed / killed, etc. Felt good. Not sure about the decision to destroy the tech. Feels a bit like someone wrote themselves into a corner. Maybe even 3 times at least. But really? A triangle puzzle. There's better final puzzles than Legend of Zelda. What the crap is this? Number 3. The entire fleet is at attention to send out Discovery for a special K red mission that I thought was the super secret kind. Everyone is aware of this one. They don't know where it's going. They just know it's leaving. It can't be a secret that it's going to just not be there anymore. Like, they have to know it's going someplace. Discovery is going someplace. They just don't know where or why.
Right. It's going to its final mission. It's just the mission itself is a red directive.
Mm-hmm. Number 4, what was the point of talking to her son about all of that if we're not even going to find out that he's becoming the captain of the Enterprise? I mean, that is definitely what is happening, right? He's going to be the captain of the Enterprise. Like, I figured they were going to have a new Discovery.
Yeah, I thought that he was going to be, maybe he'll be the Discovery A or whatever captain.
I did think, like, briefly, I did consider, like, how pissed would Legacy desirers be if they were spinning off Burnham's son
Yeah.
onto a new Enterprise.
Yeah, and not
that was going to be the next show.
Picard's son. Yeah.
Or 7 of 9.
Right, 7 of 9's the captain.
Mm-hmm.
I was just thinking about the son connection.
Yep.
He's not the first officer. What is he? Like a consulting trainee or something like that? Jack?
Yeah, something.
Crusher?
Yeah. I'd have to go back and watch Picard season 3 again.
Yeah.
Or at least that episode. Tim says, as series finales go, I would say it's strong enough to not automatically be placed in last, I think. Well, of course not. There's still these are the voyages from Enterprise. And actually, even worse than that, there's still Turnabout Intruder. I complained about maybe 3 things, but honestly, I thought it was entertaining and enjoyable and had a decent denouement. I definitely enjoy Voyager's finale less than this one. They patched up a season finale into a pretty good series finale, in my estimation, but I personally wish they hadn't addressed the Calypso connection at all rather than do this. What is this? This is never getting resolved, guys. Never. But now that I said that, it's going to be part of the prequel movie, isn't it? Another time loop-de-loop, like Star Trek 2009 somehow. The Star Trek 2009 was a loop-de-loop, Tim.
It was a bridge.
He said that's what the infidget spinner is for.
Infidget spinner?
Well, I mean, I'm literally holding a fidget spinner in my hand, but right. I don't know how he would have known that.
What does he mean? What's the Oh, the infinity symbol that denotes a red directive.
Oh, that thing.
That's what he's talking about. The infidget spinner. I get it.
Okay, gotcha.
Infidget spinner? No, he did fine. Don't need to plus it.
I was thinking that this was the first new Trek series to end, but then I remembered that actually Picard was the first to end. This seems more auspicious, though, because this show brought us into new Star Trek television, and it feels odd now that it has finished. It went out on a high note enough that I will definitely remember it more for the things that I enjoyed, as opposed to some other shows in recent years that had no idea when to stop. Running. Discovery, I was glad to have watched the now resolved Calypso. Sorry this is so long. It's the last episode. P.S. Well, Metalis sure ain't doing Legacy now, is he? I can't honestly say I like the trade-off either.
Oh yeah, did you hear about the Metalis thing?
I know that Terry Metalis is doing a Vision show for Marvel.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean he won't do Star Trek Legacy.
I agree. He could. If Marvel stuff is any indication, it'll probably be 6 episodes and it'll be like a single season. So he could totally come back for Star Trek Legacy. I did want to mention that though, because I am so pumped. The spoiler alerts for WandaVision without too much spoilers. The Ship of Theseus scene from WandaVision. You've seen WandaVision, right?
Unfortunately, yes.
The Ship of Theseus scene in WandaVision was one of my favorite scenes, and it reminded me so much of a Star Trek episode because it's a computer talking to another computer, trying to convince the computer that it doesn't want to do what it's doing, like through pure logic and stuff. And so when White Vision takes off, I was like, oh, man. This reminds me so much of like a Star Trek. It just reminded me of a Star Trek Resolution, and I wanted that for White Vision. And so Terry Metalis jumping over there and doing the Vision show, I'm pretty pumped for. He did 12 Monkeys, right?
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna go watch 12 Monkeys. After they announced the Vision thing, I was like, all right. I watched the first episode of 12 Monkeys, and I liked the movie, and I know it's different, but I watched the first episode, and the first episode was good. I just never went back to it, but knowing that it got such a rabid fan base and that he went on to make the Picard season I liked so much, and that he likes Star Trek and he's going to take on the White Vision character, I am in. I'm very excited. That has been my TED Talk.
I keep meaning to go back and watch it, but I keep getting distracted by wonderful things like Neil Gaiman's Dead Boy Detectives, currently playing on Netflix.
Ooh.
It's in the Sandman universe. Another great show you should watch if you haven't.
I still haven't, yeah.
Oh. Yeah, watch Sandman Season 1 first, and then watch Dead Boy Detectives.
Cool. Will do.
It's very dark, but very well written.
Cool. All
right, one last go-round with Stu Little here for Discovery.
Stu. Last fitting. He's like our It's like our last mission red directive with Stu here.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna leave him in a random asteroid field or something to later get picked up by Kraft.
Subject line: witty discovery finale pun title. Thanks, Stu. You really phoned it in on that one. Hello. Ah ha 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 ha. They used that Stamets line about how important this is again in the previously on.
They cut it shorter, though. They cut it way shorter, and it wasn't so egregious. This time, I feel like they listened and decided... I'm just kidding. I feel like they realized that line was way too long, and it just sounded so out of place and out of context. It sounded terrible. This time, they just said, we need to find the Progenitor's technology, and then they cut it. Last time, it was like, it is the most important thing to the Federation. I don't know.
Yeah.
This was better.
Stu says, why does a streaming show need a previously on section anyway? For people who pay for it but skip episodes for some reason? No, Stu, for people like me who just can't remember what the hell they watched. Jesus Christ. Stu continues, I'm actually pleasantly surprised Michael ended up in a sci-fi looking place and not some lame metaphorical mindscape based on some more mundane thing like her childhood home or some BS.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I mean, yeah, it did look like a sci-fi escape, something.
It's a science fiction citadel that I will remember, you know?
Yeah. I remember thinking, I don't know what I'm looking at.
Well, once they were there and lived in it a minute and had the like gravity shenanigans and stuff, I was like, this is a pretty cool place.
Yeah. Stu says, why'd Maul fight the Breen exactly? They're on the same side.
She wasn't on the same side. She was on her own side.
That's right. As she always is. Mm-hmm. Let that be a lesson to Kovich.
That's right.
If there's a way to bring Locke back, the Federation will use it. Why? I kind of feel like knowingly meddling with the forces of life and death is one of those ethical conundrums that Star Trek would traditionally grapple with. After all, when Spock was resurrected, it was unintentional by Kirk.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and she says that, but then Maul doesn't believe her. It's later that she says, I'll do everything in my power. I'm promising from me, not the Federation, that Maul actually goes along with her. Kind of, yeah. But then she still knocks her out and grabs the podium.
Yeah. Maul is going to do everything the hard way.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, let me do this. Good argument. You've convinced me, Book. Quote, Book is going to need me. I don't know how I know it, but I do. I can't believe people criticize some of the show's writing with quality moments like this on display.
Well, it was setting up the mystery for later.
Yeah. Stu says this may be one of the most exploding consoles-y episodes of Star Trek ever.
It's very true. Like, in there's a shot of Raynor somewhere halfway through the episode where like the consoles are exploding and there's just like debris raining down from the top of the ship, and it's like, man, that ship is done.
Mm-hmm. You know, I once met a girl named Debris, but her name was not Debris.
Debris?
It was, yep. That's how she pronounced her name. She's like, my name's Debris. And I was like, how's this spelled? She showed me, and I was like, that's Debris. No, my name's Debris. I'm like, good God.
Really silly.
Stu continues, to be fair, Saru, your eyes are contact lenses, kind of hard for someone to see fear in them. Yonk, yonk, yonk. I'm going to start being as critical of Stu's emails as Stu is of Discovery. Stu says, okay, how does getting the triangle puzzle right or wrong determine worthiness to wield this power exactly? It doesn't. It means she's been to 8th grade.
Yeah, it really doesn't like do anything to show the worth. It just shows that you can do a basic puzzle. Again, the puzzle's not as basic when you don't have the clue, but like it's still stupid.
Stu continues, spore yeeting the Breen to the galactic barrier was a nice plan, but the execution felt really easy and abrupt. Someone better have fatal radiation poisoning at least.
It's the same thing that because Tim said, like, who's gonna die because of this?
Yeah. Stamets should have died.
I really love, oh man, I love our audience. I love that you guys are like, the story structure of it all. You can't just do a big thing and get a big freebie. You got to have a cost. Like, what does it mean if you don't have a cost? I love it. I love it so much.
Yes, Michael, that stock footage brain dump you got was really powerful.
At some point when once they got back and she didn't use the technology and all that stuff, I thought there was a possibility that like her having that sequence of like plants growing and a child and all this stuff was her creating Quajon. Like I thought maybe they were going to find out there's a planet that's like, like she had unintentionally recreated Quajon because of her love for Book, which would have been the worst way to do it. Like take away the agency. But I thought they were doing that for a minute.
Yeah, I didn't think they were doing that. I was just shocked that they like went full 90s Madonna music video on it for a second. Stu says, once again, they should have just destroyed any and all clues they found. It would have resulted in the exact same outcome. Well, except for the Breen being turned into bitches suddenly. I don't remember them being turned into female dogs at any point.
Yeah, that's what he meant.
Okay. They should have been turned into cats. That way they could be saved.
Mm-hmm.
Kovich is Daniels, so is Maul going to be part of a time-traveling Suicide Squad now? Are they going to carry out a hit on Future Guy? I'm down for all of that.
Oh, that would be so good. Like, oh gosh, I love it so much. I love the idea of them like, so we've talked about the like timey-wimey, it's all loosey-goosey, like the big major points still happen even if we change the aesthetic and blah, blah. That's great. But if they went through and explained, like they had a show that like was able to do an anthology show, but allow certain small changes that actually fix certain plot holes and stuff, like actually do it instead of just like having it be timey-wimey possibilities in the background. It's like you actually see them, like the fact that Future Guy, like whatever, they actually like show who that was and like kill him or whatever. Forget who. Yeah. Who did Future Guy end up being, or we never found out?
We never found out. And I think someone said it was supposed to be a Romulan, and then someone else said it was supposed to be Archer from the future.
Ooh, weird.
So I don't think the writing staff was all like on the same train, but
well, I kind of like, given all these little Future Guy, Temporal War, Red Directive, Maul and Kovich, like all this stuff that's being built up in the background, and Daniels and whatever. Like I love the idea that all of that could tie into a big show about the future. You know what I mean? Future and time travel. It sounds great.
Yep. Stu says, I thought for a second Tarina was wearing a weave for her wedding. Dude, her hair was like super short and weird looking for her wedding. I noticed it. It was weird looking. Like
maybe
she had like no bangs.
I wonder if like they had to
total reshoot. Just total reshoot.
Yeah. Like they had to reshoot, and maybe she had the actual haircut during the season, but they had to do some wig for the finale or the extra shooting or something.
Oh, and Detmer don't even get to go to the wedding. The disrespect. I mean, okay. People got shit to do, Stu.
That's true. Can't always make it to destination weddings, and every wedding in space is a destination wedding.
They sent a gift. Isn't that enough? Isn't that enough, Stu? The disrespect. Stu says, wow, they jumped forward 15 years judging by the aging makeup?
No, at least 30.
Yeah, I mean, they had a grown-ass son.
Yeah, he looked 30.
So many memories. Yeah, it was 30. They did mention 30 years.
Oh, did they? Okay.
Something like, I think so. Something like that.
Did I just incept you?
I think that happened. Or maybe I'm thinking of a Married with Children I just watched.
There's a Married with Children where they jump forward 30 years?
No, there's a Married with Children where Al realizes he has an old library book and he never returned it, and they try to get him to take it back, and he's like, no, I don't want to deal with it. There was an old lady there who hated me, and they're like, it's been 30 years, Al. She's probably dead. And he goes back, and she's not dead.
Yeah, for sure.
She was eligible for retirement days before, or 3 weeks ago or something, but she held on because she knew she would get him.
That's great.
So many memories. But that wasn't a memory. That was an abstract dream sequence of you hugging everyone. That was rose-colored nostalgia. It was just a concept of good memories. Because they never shot Good Memories.
Well, I don't know. I didn't mind that at all. I thought it was good.
Yeah. I'm just saying, like, you don't, like, I'm okay with it being, like, a sequence of her, like, vaguely remembering good memories and remembering those people.
Right.
It doesn't have to be, like, a literal good memory.
Sure.
That's all I'm saying. And as speaking of disrespect, if she's remembering, where's Ash Tyler? Where's Arium?
Right.
I wanted all that, and then I wanted Lorca to just be there and go, I was okay sometimes. The final shot of the Discovery jumping is less cool when you picture the awkward, immediate follow-up of Michael having to take a shuttle back from wherever she left it. Also, I guess Zora being left alone for centuries with nobody to interact with is something we shouldn't feel bad about.
Yeah, that was really a bummer.
Rough.
That's really a bummer. Thanks for bringing it up, Stu, because I really did want to mention that. Like, Zora also, like, she's clearly sentient and does not get a, like, choice in the matter at all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, not cool.
That seems like something that should have been discussed.
Yes, 100%. And all because they needed to make Calypso make sense. And I contend you didn't. You know, like the ship just continues in service, and at some point it ends up there. You know what I mean? Like, It doesn't have to be something that they go and do.
Also, it didn't have to be that way. Like, you could have made the case that the minute they came to the future, everything changed. You never had to do that.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, it's fine that they did, and it can make sense in a way, but also, like, they, in the time travel episode they just did this season, I felt like they addressed it. And so there's often a way that this turns out where Zora's alone and singing to herself and shit.
Mm-hmm.
And the very fact that they prevented that future means they prevented Calypso.
Yeah,
and I would
exactly.
be okay with that too.
Exactly.
Stu says, so I suppose this was okay as a season finale in terms of being climactic. But there is a huge sense of futility in how not only do we find out the progenitors weren't really all that powerful like they were built up, but we don't even do anything with their tech. As a series finale, I guess they did the best they could with some constraints, but so many characters were left without much of a conclusion. Maybe some will appear in the Academy show or something else, but Adira was just there. I mean, Adira's just always been there. Stamets was only tangentially involved in something with Hugh's sudden plot device usefulness, and I kind of expected to learn that Rayner got his captaincy back for what he does here, but nope. Plus, I'm getting a little tired of TV series ending with weddings and or flash forwards to the characters much older and in lives where everything worked out fine rather than leaving on a more open-ended but hopeful note. And that was Discovery, a series of great potential, but definitely mixed in what it accomplished. It's weird to think that its spin-off in Strange New Worlds might be its most enduring legacy. Now, what are we going to do until the next show drops? I vote for turning this into a Stargate SG-1 watch show. It's got several Star Trek actors in it at different times.
Mm-hmm.
Stu, you don't write in about the TOS reviews, so maybe you don't know that they're happening. Effie and I are doing TOS reviews.
It's true. This show will continue with TOS reviews, and we will be back doing news and stuff until Lower Deck starts. Who knows? We might be able to get on and do something fun, just for fun. Some older show. We could do 12 Monkeys.
Man,
we'll probably
I don't want to
Star
commit
Trek.
to that.
I do love Stargate SG-1. I've seen it all. And Atlantis, and the one season of Universe.
I thought it was 2 seasons of Universe.
No, I believe so.
Let's see. They're starting another one soon.
Oh, really? Another Stargate?
But the last 2 series didn't. Yeah, Stargate Universe was 2 seasons. The last 2 series didn't have endings.
Right. I just remember the last one ending very abruptly, and I thought it was after 1 season.
No, SGU had 2 seasons.
Interesting.
But either way,
yeah, it was a real bummer. Maybe I haven't seen the second season. Maybe it's less of a bummer if I've seen the whole thing.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I still think it ended on a cliffhanger.
Yeah, but I think I did watch the whole thing, and it was really good. I liked it. I was interested in it. It definitely like very different vibe. It's very much them trying to do Battlestar Galactica.
Mm-hmm.
Like very, very much them trying to do like their own.
But Voyager
spin.
too.
Yeah, well, kinda. They're going out. I just mean in like tone and in like the way the characters are interacting. And everything. It's very Battlestar Galactica.
But like premise-wise, I thought they were like...
Premise-wise, they are getting on a ship that is some sort of like progenitor technology ship that's like traveling out somewhere, and they beam onto the ship. And then this crew of like sort of assorted crewmen. I'm having a vague memories of. I just remember the sort of beginning, and if I remember, they don't know where the ship's going, and they don't know like what they're doing. But they slowly, over the course of this, I guess 2 seasons, they like sort of they're on a ship that's on autopilot, and it jumps forward without their like knowing, but they can sort of like slightly direct the ship, and like they can go off on little like side missions here and there, but like for the most part the ship is under its own control, and they sort of like slowly gain function of the ship back, and I don't think they ever really truly gain full function of the ship, but they're sort of like stowaways on like an ancient technology ship that's doing something and they don't know what it is.
I just remember flying towards the sun or something.
I don't remember. I do vaguely remember it flying toward the sun, and I think that was one of their like, I think it was like recharging itself or something.
It had to be like one of the first things. Because I didn't watch more than like a couple episodes. Yeah,
and I think they end up like sort of, engaging with the ship and sort of helping the ship and in its mission, but I don't think they really know what the mission is. They're just heading towards somewhere. But it's it's a show of exploration, but it's a weird one, but I like it. One of my favorite things about the Stargate universe is how the technology builds on itself over the course of the seasons. The 10 seasons of SG-1 are great because like you start with them, they just get the Stargates, and it's very much like the Stargate the movie. They're just going to planets through the Stargates, and they're sort of like, then they start building relationships with different cultures, very much like Star Trek. Like they've got these different cultures that they sort of slowly build connection, and then they start getting some of their technology. So by the end of the series, they have their own ships and stuff that can also go out. And there's some very like Doctor Who style, like big emotional moments where they end seasons with characters doing like valiant, brave things that like save the galaxy. It's fun. It's got some really great stuff in there. But it's been years. It's been 20 years since I've seen it, so I don't remember it that well.
Yeah, I remember bugging you, making fun of SG-1 because like every episode I happened to walk into, I was like, this is an episode of Star Trek.
Yeah, no, it's definitely like
they just ripped off this episode.
I mean, it's similar to the way the Orville is. The Orville's also, what I like about Stargate is that it is like Star Trek, and it has similar episodes to Star Trek sometimes, but like it does a really cool job of them taking people from like our time now, and over the course of 10 seasons they become like sort of like elevate humanity, and they build up their own ships and their own like technology, and I don't know, it's kind of fun because it's, instead of it being these future people, it's just regular people right now doing all this stuff.
I would like to like go back and like get really invested in it, but then also I don't want to because I know it doesn't have an ending.
Well, the shows do. I mean, you can watch SG-1 and Atlantis, and they're both really good and have endings.
Oh, I didn't think Atlantis had an ending. I thought it was canceled on a cliffhanger.
That's a good question. Maybe I'm wrong. I thought it had an ending. I don't know. It's been, like I said, 20 years or whatever. I don't know when Atlantis ended. I was like, shortly after Atlantis ended, I think I watched them all.
Yeah, we were living together when Universe came out.
Yeah, so I had just finished all of the other stuff before Universe came out.
Yeah, because you were like plowing through them.
Yeah, I was watching a lot. I was watching a lot of it. It was like one of those shows I had on in the background while I was doing other stuff, and so I burned through like all 15 seasons or whatever. Yeah. So Atlantis ended in 2009. So I got into it shortly after that, I think.
But to answer Stu's question, or to eschew his vote, I will not turn my Star Trek podcast into a Stargate podcast.
But Dave, the episodes, they're all basically Star Trek episodes.
I know. I'd rather spend that time reviewing old Star Trek episodes.
Yeah. No, I hear that. I wouldn't want to do that either. I wouldn't mind, like, if it was prior to Picard, like, knowing now that Terry Matalas is such a big part of what made that season the season it was, I wouldn't have minded, like, I wouldn't have done an episode by episode, but, like, a review of 12 Monkeys, like, this is who this guy is. But that's all, like, water under the bridge at this point. We've already seen Picard. But in the future, like, if there's a cool show coming out that, like, oh, this guy comes from this other show that's very lauded, like, maybe we'll go watch a season of it and talk about, like, how we think it is and what we think it might mean for that series of Star Trek or something.
Yeah.
But, like, yeah, I want to stick to Star Trek on this show. We've like, I wish
more than enough.
Yeah, there's more than enough to talk about. I wish on Stranded Panda we had a good time to go back and watch old stuff, because I love watching old stuff, but it's just so hard because, like, when you watch old stuff, nobody listens. It's like, except for the few people who are big fans of that stuff, which is great, but, like, we tend to stick to new stuff because what people are going to listen to in podcast form, and so the amount of work we'd have to put in would be the same as watching new shows, but the audience would be way diminished, and so it'd be, like, not as easy to get made. Yeah. Other than Star Trek, there's not really shows I want to go back to. I mean, Marvel stuff and Star Trek stuff, that's pretty much it.
Yep. I understand. Like, I am having fun doing Star Trek, the original series episode reviews, but it keeps the show in rankings, and it keeps
the
show feed alive.
Out. Yeah. Like, I don't like when we have, like, a 6-month hiatus because there's no show on. So I'm glad that's going on. And I would love to be on some. I'd happily jump on here and there. If you let me know when y'all are recording one, I'll hop on.
I'll try to get that knowledge.
Yeah. If you know something's coming or, like, whatever, and you can hit me up, I'd hop on for some. The reason I'm not on as many is because I haven't been able to. Last year particularly, I wasn't able to hop on as often. I sort of intentionally. I've said this before on other casts. I don't know about this one. Last year, I took off all podcasting except for MCU Cast, mostly, except for MCU Cast and Multiverse News and this show. Like, I did those 3, and I kind of, like, backed off of everything else because I didn't, like, seek out Pandavision or Bingers Assemble content to make, because I just couldn't with the new families. Just, like, kind of.
You were doing Multiverse News.
That's what I said. Those 3. MCU Cast,
what you said?
MCU Cast, Multiverse News, and Star Trek.
Oh,
those are the 3 I tried to never miss. You know.
Gotcha. I don't know why I thought you didn't say that.
Yeah. Well, you got anything else, Dave? Any other?
I don't.
Cool.
I don't.
Well, we've gone way long, so this is going to take a while for me to edit already. So I'm going to let you go, and we will get this out and hopefully hear from you guys over the next 2 weeks, and we'll be back with some news and feedback probably soon.
Or at the very least, original series episodes reviews with Effie.
Yes. I just meant when I'll be back. And hopefully with some of those, that'd be great. So, Jolan True.
Live long and prosper.
Thank you for listening to the Star Trek Universe Podcast, a Stranded Panda production. If you'd like to hear more from David C. Roberson, check out the DC On Screen podcast or maladjusted.tv for his web videos. If you'd like to hear more from Matthew Carroll, check out the Marvel Cinematic Universe podcast or listen to his music. Just search for Matthew Carroll anywhere you get music.